Hello, and welcome to An American Werewolf in New Jersey podcast. This is episode 2 of Something Shitty This Way Comes, where I take a movie that I just think is enormously overrated. I mean, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there that you can pick up on, and I think, I started off last week with like part 9 of the Friday the 13th series with Jason Goes to Hell. But as I started to think about it, I saw that there are so many movies that to me are just completely overrated, and I think that there's a lot of good content there to talk about, and so that's what I'm going to do. And this is my episode for 1993's Bram Stoker's Dracula. So without any further ado, let's get underway. Okay, so we're here to talk Bram Stoker's Dracula. I should disclose. I was posting about this today on my Facebook page, my Facebook profile, not the podcast page. There is a page there for this podcast, but I was posting an advertisement for this, and an old friend of mine said, "I really thought you liked that movie." Which is really funny to me. Here's the thing. I own this movie. Here's my copy right here. And I love how now Blu-rays have this sort of double feature, triple feature thing. And I have a copy along with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And I think that Shelley's Frankenstein is just a fantastic interpretation of the novel. But of course it comes with a copy of Stoker's Dracula. I have owned this movie on VHS. I've owned this movie on DVD, and now I own it on Blu-ray. And here's what the reason that is the case, and that I'm also now creating this podcast episode about it, is that over the decades, I have very, very much wanted to like this movie. And about once a year, I will actually pop it in and say, well, maybe this time, this will be the time. And I can never even make it to the halfway point. I'm having a similar experience, I guess, with a movie that got released about 10 years ago or so, with Benicio del Toro's the remake of The Wolfman. I own it on Blu. I think I owned it on DVD. Now I own it on Blu-ray. I have the unrated version. I want very much to like this movie. I get, what I hope is a director's cut where more is going to be revealed, and it's a consistent disappointment. It's not a good movie. So this episode sort of puts that to bed for me, and that I can just finally say I've given up on Stoker's Dracula. Hold on, we have some comments here. Oh, Eric's here. I think Oldman is always great. His co-stars in this. I'm looking at you. Keanu and Winona are another story. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. And Marty's here. What's up, Marty? What's up? And everybody saying hi from there. Okay. It's got a great cast. This movie has a fantastic ensemble cast. You've got Gary Oldman. You've got Keanu Reeves. You've got Winona Ryder. You've got Anthony Hopkins. You've got Cary Elwes. You've got Tom Waits. I mean, these are just fantastic, stellar performers. And unfortunately, they aren't able to pull it off. Hold on, we got a few more comments here. I like this movie enough, but sometimes it moves so fast I can't tell what's going on, and it confuses me. Well, we've got an ensemble cast. We've got a writer, I think, by the name of James Hart, and he has no mentionable horror to his credit. He's got Hook, which I think was that Robin Williams Peter Pan movie, and I don't recall that I particularly enjoyed that. And he did one of the Muppet movies or something like that. So there's nothing in here that says, this person is set to draw this epic, sort of vampire tale. And so you understand, I mean, Dracula is, the template from, where all vampire stories come from. Count Stoker wrote a perfect reference source. And for some reason, this movie, thinks that it's being loyal to that, but it's not. And that's weird because it's directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and Coppola understands horror. He does. He understands horror, and he directed Apocalypse Now. I mean, what's more horrific than that movie? It's rough stuff. But for some reason, he created this movie that is just entirely high maintenance. It is just way over the top with what it's asking you, the viewer, to sort of absorb and understand. The D in this movie stands for drama. It's melodrama. It's dripping with this goth mall, kind of drama that you are being asked to just accept. And it's a melodrama that has a slight coating of horror around it. Coppola is like pulling every possible trigger that he can in this movie to just make it so glossy and stylized that it ceases to be. It's not scary at all. It's not. But he it's scene after scene after scene is just gloss and set design and this flowing thing that's just happening at all times, which we'll get into. I'm going to start to get into now. The movie starts out with this cross that is just falling in slow motion, and then it hits the floor and it shatters into all these pieces, and you're like, oh boy, we're in for it. Okay, here we go. And it's got the deep cellos playing and all these sorts of things, and it starts out with what you want to actually see, which is someone talking about Vlad Tepes. And I was talking in the last Something Shitty that there was a television show on HBO called Project Greenlight, where Ben Affleck and Matt Damon were donating $1 million to help some aspiring screenwriter produce their film. And so I think there were hundreds of applications, and then the show starts and they get to the final 5. And the movie that got greenlit was, it ended up being like a comedy drama or something like that. But one of the final 5 was a screenplay called Order of the Dragon, which to the best of my knowledge has never been put into production. But it made it close about 30 years ago, right around the time this movie came out. And you saw this guy and how intense he was, the screenwriter. He wasn't like some comedy writer that ended up, winning, who, had Shia LaBeouf, brought into the movie. This guy was like super intense. And I was like, oh man, please, please, please let this guy win the contest. Let's get that in production. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. So when I start to see that they're starting off with the Turks and Constantinople and, the Vlad Tepes storyline, I'm like, okay, this is going to be something. And they do that turn where Gary Oldman, with Anthony Hopkins in the narration, said Dracula. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, where the hell did Dracula get a curling iron from? I like the armor. I like the armor. I think it's pretty badass. I don't know that it's functional or anything like that, but I'm like, what the hell is going on with Gary Oldman's hair? And he's got Winona Ryder, who, apparently has been with him for 500 years. And, he goes out there and he starts, getting busy on the battlefield. So I'm like, well, okay, maybe I can, get past the hair curlers, and all this maybe he had rollers in his hair last night or something like that. Or, Winona Ryder did his hair before he went into combat. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can get past that. And then they start to go into some of the combat scenes. And I'm not going to recount every, scene in the movie because it's a bad movie. So I'm not going to, give that much indulgence. But, I kind of liked this and forgive me for Fandango, I'm borrowing your image. But, I was like, okay, this could actually be something because, this is the kind of Dracula that I wouldn't mind seeing. And I think eventually they did get around to it. A couple of years ago, they made that movie Dracula Untold with Luke Evans, which gets very much into the Vlad Tepes story. And that was a passable Dracula movie. I really liked that movie. Unfortunately, from there, it just kind of goes to pot. And, Elisabetta is, Winona Ryder is duped into believing that Dracula's been killed. So she kills herself. So Dracula goes back and, he renounces God and he stabs this cross. And for some reason, the cross starts bleeding. And the next thing you know, like a whole river of blood is like erupting in this chapel. And you're like, what the hell is this? What exactly is happening here? It's like gushing out by like the bucket load. And it's just, and you're like, oh boy, okay. And it's not scary. It's not scary the first time you see it. By this point, I don't even know what the point is. And that's another thing I want to talk about. What I thought in 1993, I don't have the same thinking now in 2021. So, what might have been passable, at that age, now you're just like, oh man, this is silly. And every time I watch it, that's why I can't get through a full screening, because it's so over the top that you're just like, wow, this is really bad. Hang on. We got some more comments here. Oh, John, it's a period piece romance with a horrible take on Stoker's story. Yes, it is, sir. What's up, brother? Thank you for dropping in on the show. John's a friend of the show and someone I've had on here as a guest. He's going to be taking a more regular role, co-hosting with me here. Trenchy, when we're talking Dracula, I think nothing can beat the Bela Lugosi version, in my personal opinion, although I haven't seen the Lee stuff yet. Yeah, man, you got to get to that. You got to get to that hammer, brother. And Marty's saying, Trenchy saying, hey to John. And I would have loved it if they had more Vlad the Impaler. Yeah, I would love to see a Vlad the Impaler, kind of thing. They only touched on it briefly in the the Dracula Untold with Luke Evans, although that was a passable Dracula movie. So, okay, we come back and now we're in, supposedly modern times. And let me say up front, I don't give a rat's ass about the accents, because I heard people say, well, Keanu's accent is terrible and Winona's accent is terrible. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, okay? I heard this one time when somebody was saying something about Chris Pine. Chris Pine did a movie where he played Robert the Bruce, I think, for Netflix. And it's a pretty good movie. It takes place, after the events of Braveheart. And his Scottish accent was terrible. How's your Scottish accent? Okay? How's your Scottish accent? Or, somebody was saying something, I think in the second season of Luke Cage, the villain is a guy named Bushmaster, and he's like Haitian or Jamaican or something. Oh, his accent. Well, how's your Haitian accent? So I don't care about any of that. I'm perfectly fine accepting a subpar accent. I was fine watching Kevin Costner and Robin Hood have no British accent whatsoever. It meant nothing to me. If you've got a good script and you've got good performances and decent direction, then I'm not picking that shit out of pepper here. What my problem is that by the time we get to modern times, we're introduced to Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. Now, let me say, I love Winona Ryder. I think she's a great performer. I like Keanu Reeves. I'm a huge Keanu Reeves fan. I go back as far as Bill and Ted. I own Point Break on Blu-ray. I own all 3 of the Matrix movies. I own all 3 of the John Wick movies on Blu-ray. I'm happy to sit down and watch some Keanu Reeves like anytime. It's not a problem. Back then, I think that he was taking on some roles that he wasn't quite prepared for, and this is one of them, but I'll get into that in a minute. The big beef that I have is that there is not just bad chemistry between Winona Ryder and Harker. There is no chemistry. I don't know what the hell that was about. There's just no chemistry whatsoever between them. And I don't know if Coppola did that deliberately to try to, say, well, Keanu's going to be the cuck here, because, Dracula's the alpha and we're just going to push him right out of the way. But they spend a lot of time with Keanu Reeves. So you would think that he would have a bit more presence or a bit more of an attachment to his wife, but he just doesn't. You're also introduced to the Tom Waits character, who I really liked. I could listen. I just sit back sometimes and I'll turn on Spotify on my phone and just listen to Tom Waits. And it's fantastic all the time. I like to watch Tom Waits act. He's done a number of Jim Jarmusch movies that I enjoy. Coffee and Cigarettes, and he did another one that I can't remember off the top of my head, but him as Renfield was fantastic. I liked him as Renfield, and very much I would have liked to see like a prequel of sorts, where, because you understand that Renfield is the prequel to Harker, and I said that I wasn't going to go through every scene, but I'm going to sort of set this up here. I would have liked to seen Renfield at the castle, going and being driven insane, and now he's in an asylum back in the UK, in some insane way, sort of preparing the way for Dracula. Yeah. By the time that happens, then we also get to we're introduced not just to Mina, but to Lucy. And the girl that they get to, Winona Ryder is beautiful, but the girl that they get to play, Lucy, is just stunning. And I don't know her name off the top of my head. I didn't do the research for the names or anything like that. But it's overacting. It's overacting, and they're trying to, show that these women or that Lucy is curious about sex, and, they're like reading Arabian Nights, and none of that has anything to do with Dracula or any, it's not from the book, or it really doesn't. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't lead to anything. You could take that story out, and I think, that was part of the conversation that I had with Steve Langford when he talked about Hitchcock. Hitchcock put nothing in his scripts or in his movies that didn't apply to something. You could have taken the sort of flirting with sexuality that goes nowhere out and just had them be, sort of chaste ladies, maybe one of them or 2 of them are, getting ready to get married. And yeah, it wouldn't have affected the story at all. So, why are you putting it in there? Hold on, Eric's here. Loved Keanu in River's Edge. I don't think I've seen that with Dennis Hopper and Crispin Glover. Okay, I'm going to have to check that out. John saying, hey, back to Trenchy. Hold on, wait. Eric's here. I read Steve Buscemi was originally asked to play Renfield, but turned him down. That would have been interesting. Steve Buscemi. I love me some Steve Buscemi. Never a problem with that. But Tom Waits is awesome. So, we're not going to, I'm perfectly willing to be okay with it. The script with the ladies is just overacting, and we're briefly introduced to them. And then we start to get to the castle scene. Now, the castle scene in a Dracula movie is very important to me. It's where, you start to build the creep. You start to get introduced to the count, and what type of count this is going to be. We start with Lugosi, and I've talked about that in another episode, one of my first episodes, where I said, you're just consumed by the size of this castle, and how Lugosi comments on the spider consuming the unworthy fly, and how small Harker looks in that castle. Here we've just got kind of gloss. We've got this glossy thing. I don't know that they're really paying much attention to the castle all that much. They're trying more to do tricks with shadows. There's a scene where Oldman's shadow is strangling Harker because Winona Ryder looks like his former wife, so he instantly forms this idea to, now he has to go to England and claim her. I'm not sure why that's necessarily even part of the storyline, except that, they've opted for this melodrama. At the time, in 1993, yeah, that was kind of cool, the kind of tricks. Now, I'm like, wow, this is really not that good at all. And when I think of something that is far better, I think of Herzog and Klaus Kinski's interpretation of Nosferatu, where there are no special effects. Herzog's pulling no triggers. He's using claustrophobia and proximity, that this thing is just hanging right over your shoulder, that this thing is sitting, less than a meter from you, and it just does nothing but breathe and stare, that it's not a person. It's this thing now wearing a person suit, and that the guy who plays Harker is instantly picks up on this, that something has gone terribly wrong, and that he is in mortal danger. And as weird as this sounds, it reminds me of so throwing somebody naked into a lion's cage. They're just utterly unprepared and exposed, and every vulnerability is just exacerbated by this super predator that is just right there, sitting right next to you. Look at that thing. That is scary. That is not special effects or tricks with shadows, or I don't even think that there is any soundtrack at this particular point in the castle scene. It's acting. Now, let me not disrespect Gary Oldman, because Gary Oldman's performance is fan-fucking-tastic. His performance is fantastic. It's just a bad story. I mean, I've seen Gary Oldman. He knows how to play a scary character. I don't know that I've seen Gary Oldman play like a tragically romantic character. I mean, here we're seeing it, and clearly, I'm not really a fan. He's got this long sort of hair that runs down to his ass. I don't know what that's about. In the book, Dracula is, if I'm not mistaken, he's bald. He's bald with the long fingernails. He's a short, thin man, and Oldman is, he's not a very tall man. So, but I'm not disrespecting him about that. And he's just got a simple military style mustache because he was a military commander. Yeah, it's just, it's not great. It's not great. John's here ever since the 70s and the 80 version where Frank Langella. Yeah, where Langella, he's like got his shirt open and he refused to wear fangs. And before that, unfortunately, there's something even more painful. There's, Jack Palance. Jack Palance is like a 1974 Dracula. And I remember flipping through Amazon one night. Oh, Dracula, Jack Palance, no problem. And I turned it on, and within 10 minutes, Dracula's like kissing some woman. And you're like, what the hell am I watching here? This is Jack Palance. Like, nobody wants to watch Jack Palance kiss anybody, let alone, this kind of thing. They completely gloss, and here I'm just going to start to move through things. They completely gloss over the Demeter. The Demeter scene, the Demeter section in the book is, for me, one of my most prized pieces of English literature. That he has made it to, he's making it to the New World, and you understand through these journals that people are slowly missing. And that's what I love about Dracula. Dracula isn't in the book very often directly. He's in it through journal entries and newspaper clippings. And you understand as the reader through inference why all these things are happening. But the Demeter is just one of my all-time favorite scenes. And eventually, I think Netflix, I always said that the scenes on the Demeter could be its own movie. And you could just call it the Demeter or something like that, where the movie would end with the ship and all the dead people just pulling into London. And you realize that Dracula has made it to the New World. That would be a fantastic movie. And I think Netflix finally got around to doing in that 3-part thing that they did. They made the whole second episode about the Demeter trip, although they put their own spin on it. It wasn't bad, but so I like the idea that somebody got that idea. Eric's here. I've always hated the movie trope of a character looking like someone's lost love from a previous time. Yeah, it's just bad. It's just bad. And John, I try to forget Jack Palance movie. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause you any undue pain. But yeah, it's out there, and it's terrible. It's a terrible. Well, at least for the 15 minutes that I watch it. Suddenly, we find out that Dracula can become a werewolf. I'm not sure what that's about. I've never heard of a vampire that can become a werewolf. If anything, I've talked about, best vampire movie, then best werewolf movie, but somehow they seem to overlap these things. And not only is he, a werewolf, he's a werewolf that has sex with Lucy in the cemetery. No problem seeing, Lucy in the buff. It's a little strange, this outfit. I mean, who goes to bed like that? And again, everything's just flowing, and she's moving in slow motion, and and you're like, what the hell is going on here? And Eric's, yeah, who hasn't played Dracula? Pretty much. One of my all-time favorite shows, series is a series called Penny Dreadful. And I love that series. Eva Green is she's a goddess. She's a queen. And I loved seeing Timothy Dalton again. And I love Josh Hartnett. And everybody that was in that show. But the third season is about Dracula. And it punches like all the tickets and just does it so well. But Dracula is played by this guy, and he's not necessarily a bad, well, I don't know. I don't know if he's good or bad, but Dracula has a part-time job in a museum. And you're like, what the hell is this? Dracula does not take a part-time job. It's like a curator in a museum. What the hell is going on? Werewolves, there's that whole scene with the white wolf. I mean, just completely unnecessary. What the hell does that white wolf scene have anything to do? If you pull that white wolf scene out, other than the fact that I guess it's starting to connect Dracula and Mina, I don't really see the point. And here's another thing, and I'm sort of moving through now. I have no feeling whatsoever for Winona Ryder's character. I don't feel any compassion for her. I find her to be kind of annoying, to be perfectly honest. She's kind of a hoe. Mina is kind of a hoe. I mean, Keanu's in there fighting for his very existence against, these vampire women that are just draining him dry. And, he's been gone a little while, and all of a sudden, within one day, she's out there and she's whining and she's dining and, she's dancing, um, dinner, and Dracula's turning all her tears to diamonds, and you're never exactly clear as to whether she is the actual reincarnation of this woman, or it's just a mighty resemblance, or is you see during one of the scenes, is Dracula planting this suggestion in her head. John says Dracula was supposed to be able to turn into a wolf. Yeah, I've seen that, although I've heard it. I've never seen it acted out. But I've never heard of him being able to turn into a werewolf. And Eric says, all the problems with the movie. I did really like Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing. Again, it's a good performance. It's just not a good story. It's not a good story, at least not to me. Yeah, I have no compassion. By this time, Dracula, he turns Lucy, and the bed is exploding, with blood, and it's just all this glossy symbolism, and you're like, oh man, this is just bad. And then Dracula's actually weeping. He's this heartbroken, guy, and it's just, you're like, wow, this is really, really bad. Dracula is a parasite. Dracula is a parasite that drinks your blood to survive, to stay young. It's the difference between that and this. That is a parasite that needs to drink your blood to stay young. I don't know what this is, and I get it. Like, there's part of me that says, yes, of course I get it. Because even Lugosi, when Lugosi was doing Todd Browning's interpretation, he had played Dracula on the stage, hundreds, maybe thousands of times. And my understanding was that they had added a romantic element because you need to put asses in the seats, because horror people are very loyal, but it's sort of a niche group of people. Not everybody watches horror movies. Every once in a while, you get one that transcends everything, like Jaws, or maybe the first couple Alien movies, or The Exorcist, or something like that. But by and large, it's a small but loyal group of people who have these types of discussions. So I get it. Maybe you need to add a bit more. But Coppola could have done something better than this. And it won Oscars, but I don't know. Does that mean that the Oscars don't mean as much as they once did? I don't know. It's too dramatic. It's just melodrama. Hold on, I got a couple of more comments here. Wolves are supposed to be symbols of the beast, i.e. the devil. Yeah, I guess. Winona is a Victorian vixen. Yeah, I mean, she's something, man. Now, it kind of comes together, and the team, they start to assemble this team, and I'm not going to get into too much more. I'm going to, kind of taper off here. But, of course, we know in the end, Dracula gets killed. And then there's this line where, like, Lucy's love can release them all from the powers of darkness. And you're just like, oh, that's just bad writing. That's bad writing. And then she chops off his head, and, yeah. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about this movie. I don't recommend it. If you're going to watch a decent, I usually bring up a decent vampire movie, or I'll bring up, a contemporary movie, but I didn't this time. Except to say, you probably do a lot better watching Klaus Kinski and Werner Herzog's Nosferatu, and that's from 1979, where they're not pulling any punches, they're not pulling any triggers. They're just trying to make a scary, scary movie. And Klaus Kinski is half of a vampire demon anyway, so I mean, it's not much of a surprise that he could play that so well to perfection. So I don't want to go on any more about this. I'm going to, yeah, probably not watch this ever again. I'd have my copy of Shelley's Frankenstein, so it's not like I'm going to throw the Blu-ray out. But yeah, that's what I think of Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's very, I think it's very popular with the ladies because they like the romance and all this sort of stuff. But it's not a horror movie. It's just this sort of melodrama with a lot of overacting and over stylized set designs and just a lot of bullshit. And even 20 years ago, like my friend, I thought you liked that. Well, that was 30 years ago, and I thought part of it was okay. And that basically ended when they left the castle, when the castle scenes kind of ended. But now looking at it, you're like, wow, this is really bad. So that's it for me. We'll be back on Wednesday with working on John Carpenter's Apocalypse Trilogy. That's a movie I'm looking forward. Part 2, Prince of Darkness. That's a movie I'm very much looking forward to talking about. And then on Thursday, we'll be here with my panel talking about From Dusk Till Dawn, I believe. We got that coming up. So, that's something worthwhile. Those are movies that's a worthy vampire movie. Something, fuck it. If you want to talk about a 90s vampire movie that's worth watching, then we're talking about, and I think it's Robert Rodriguez. I haven't done all the research, and I haven't seen it in a while. I have to watch that, actually. It's From Dusk Till Dawn. That's a vampire movie. That's a horror movie, okay? That's how you do it. Vampires don't cry. Ugh. I love From Dusk Till Dawn. Damn, I'm watching the TV show now. I gotta check the TV show. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to get around to it. From Dusk Till Dawn. So we got that to look forward to. Thank you to Eric. Thank you to Trenchy. Thank you to Marty. Thank you to John for stopping in today. And we'll be back next weekend with a new selection for Something Shitty This Way Comes. Because believe me, there's a lot of shitty there's a lot of shitty movies out there. All right. Take care, everybody. All the best. And happy Memorial Day weekend. It's not about, having a long weekend or anything about that. It's about our veterans out there that, fought and died, for the United States of America. So, try to remember what it's about. Hold on. Eric's here. Yeah, it's fantastic. That's a vampire movie. Not this. I don't know what that is. What the hell is up with that hairdo? That's just terrible. Goodbye.